Hey, Brandon here. Welcome to the channel and thanks for tuning in. Got a great 2024 rookie show here for you. We're going to talk overrated rookies. Going to be joined again by Corey Pereira, one of my favorite Dynasty analysts out there. We're each going to give you two players headed to the NFL draft that we feel are just a little overrated. We just recently dropped our underrated show, so go check that out. But it's Combine week. The Combine's this weekend. Exciting time. One of the pieces of the puzzle as we finalize our ranks. But nonetheless, we're going to give you four names here. If you play Dynasty, you play Fantasy, and you're looking for a YouTube channel out there that's not going to just give you the 2024 draft class analysis. We are already starting to look at the 2025 and 2026 classes as well. Hit that subscribe button. Help me grow the channel. Let's get to the show. Hey, Corey, welcome back to the channel, man. We had you on a week or two ago, and we talked about our underrated rookies. Now we're going to talk about our overrated rookies, players that maybe we're fading a little bit, maybe that people think are a little higher on their boards than ours. And since I am the good host, I am going to pass it off to you for you to go first. We're just going to talk about two players that we feel are a little overvalued. Who's your first player, Corey?
Yeah, and I'm going to start off a little bit hot here. He's really rising up boards for a lot of people, and I'm starting over at LSU, and I'm talking about Brian Thomas Jr. And I think when we talk, overrated or underrated players, it's really based around the value, because it's not that I necessarily dislike Thomas. I just dislike the cost it takes to get him now. I mean, I get all the upside that's there. Young player, he's an early declare. Didn't really break out to this last season, and there is a reason for that. I thought LSU kind of misused him as an intermediate possession receiver in his sophomore season. Like, they gave him like almost 60% of his targets within 9 yards of the line of scrimmage before this year, and that just didn't really suit him. He's not a big time yak guy. He's not a short area quickness guy. And then this season, they primarily used him on deep routes, and that really unlocked the true potential that we saw this year. The strengths of his game, phenomenal player above the rim, great hands at the catch point, good concentration climbing the ladder, the extension, the timing of his elevation, like when to get high, good contested catch numbers over the past 2 years. But I just think he's a little bit more raw and a one-note player than he's given credit for, like, given how high he's ranked in some of these places. Like, to me personally, there isn't a ton of technique at the line. He's mostly using speed releases when faced with press, and there isn't a lot of press to begin with. And then there isn't a lot of manipulation during the stems of his routes either. Like, he's winning a lot on athleticism, even seeing like little head fakes or like subtle false steps, any of that. There's just not a lot of that in a super consistent level. And in some ways, like, I get it. He essentially has this one trick that could get him on the field, at least. Maybe similar to like a George Pickens last year, where a vertical speed guy, 50-50 guy, I don't think they share the same body control, but he can use that trick while he works out the kinks to the rest of his game. Still super young, could easily keep developing, but he just came across very one-dimensional to me. Like, I prefer him as a second-round pick in rookie drafts, and he doesn't seem like a first-round NFL talent to me. But looking at like mock draft database, they got him 23rd consensus overall. I think he's going to end up going there on upside alone, and that's really going to propel him up rankings. I mean, even just looking at DynastyLeagueFootball.com, they have some rookie ADP out early because they're the only ones that are really doing it right now. They've got Brian Thomas going as the wide receiver 4, like after the big 3. So to me, if I could sell him for like a Troy Franklin, if I could add a piece to get up to a Rome Odunze, if I could get like a bona fide NFL talent, like a George Pickens, like I just talked about, or a Drake London or something like that, I would definitely consider doing that. So I just think that he's a little more raw than people are giving credit for. And there is upside there. I recognize that. But just at this price, I'm a little bit out on this price.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. We talked pre-show about the all 22 films I put on the Slack chat for us on my dashboard product. And, we watched 3 games and there was a lot of manufactured touches in his game.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, the guy can win vertical. There's no doubt about it. But is he going to be that space creator, nuanced route runner that is going to be able to create space in the NFL? Because that's what the name of the game is. All right.
And how long can he keep winning on that one trick? You know what I mean? Before he has to get the other parts of his game going.
Right. Well, I'm going to talk. My player is very similar to yours, and I'm going to talk about Keon Coleman. And I know that people watching the show are like, "Oh yeah, either you love or you hate the guy."
Yeah.
But I mean, I really feel, he was at Michigan State a couple years, transfers to Florida State, 6'4", 215-pound wide receiver, plays LSU week 1, has that catch, makes the guy miss in the second level, has a 3-touchdown game, 122 yards. And ever since that, he was vaulted up into this wide receiver room. Now, there's not a lot of 6'4", 215-pound receivers that are dominating in the NFL right now. And if you are 6'4", 215, and who knows if that's his real, size, we'll get it in the combine here this week. But there's not many receivers that can win with that speed and size unless you are truly an elite space creator. And I just don't see that in Keon Coleman's film. You guys are looking at the PFF's grades here on the sheet, on the show here. I mean, his receiving grade's pretty poor. His contested catch is pretty poor. His grade versus man coverage is pretty poor. his yards after the catch. I don't think he has got a great yards after the catch. I just want to go through. So I'll go through a scouting report first, right? He's got the size, he's got the frame, he's got the ability to high point, the tracking ability, the body control, the hands, and everything like that. But, I think he's a raw route runner, just like your Brian Thomas Jr. All right. And I don't think he really vertically separates. There was a ton of film where he's up going for the ball where he's got somebody in his hip, right? And for me, but in wide receivers, it's all about space creation. And I question whether Keon Coleman, again, for exactly what you said about Brian Thomas Jr., is the price. I mean, there's a lot of draft guys out there that do this for a living that I think Keon Coleman is going to be a top 5 wide receiver taken in this class. And I'm just going to be fading him at that point, unless he gets in, the draft capital and just an ideal, landing spot. But I am still going to be really hard to pick him in the first round, early second in my rookie drafts. There's other receivers I like so much better, like Lad McConkey in this class and Malachi Corley, just guys that are got, different skill sets. They're more space creators, and the season, I'm just going to tell you this season, he had 122 yards week 1 against LSU. And I'm looking at his whole, stat line here from the whole season against Syracuse in October. He had 140 yards and he had one game after those 100-yard games where he had 86 yards against Clemson, and he didn't get above 50 yards for the rest of the year on any game. And, so where's this elite production? I know he lost his quarterback late in the season, but I don't know. Ever since that LSU game, that was his best game of the season. And it's simply, if you're looking at his stats here, been downhill ever since. He's had some flashes and some moments, but I think he's overrated. I think there's other receivers that can get open faster, got twitchier movement skills. And I just think the NFL as a whole is moving away from these big bodied receivers, as we've seen in previous classes, where I really question if Keon Coleman is really a top 5 wide receiver. He is not going to be a guy. I know he's going to get the draft capital, but he's a guy that I'm probably going to be fading a little bit more than others.
Yeah, I mean, between like the disappearing acts and like even some of the advanced metrics, and then even like you said, the skill set within today's modern NFL, like there's a lot there that I'm a little bit worried about as well. And I will say, like, Jordan Travis, I don't think was the best quarterback for him. There's a lot of times I felt he could have like hit him better in stride, or Keon Coleman had to kind of work back to the ball, which I also don't think he does a very good job of, like working back towards the ball. He just kind of stands there and waits for the ball to get to him. And I think some of that was because of led to those contested catch rates. But still, a guy that just like, I don't know, everybody saw that LSU game and it way overinflated his value for like the rest of the season.
I feel like that too.
Yeah, I'm going to head over to another wide receiver here. We're just down talking a lot of wide receivers here.
We are down talking a lot of wide receivers.
I'm going to talk about Texas wide receiver Adonai Mitchell, or AD Mitchell, whatever you want to go by, who I think is a little bit overrated right now. Some people ranking him anywhere between, like wide receiver 5 to wide receiver 10, like somewhere in that range. I'm much closer to the back end of that, but I followed him closely since he was a Georgia guy. I like to call myself a Georgia fan. And on the plus side, I will say very good body control, great sideline awareness, really shows my ball mentality in the air sometimes. Another guy who really flashes above the rim. But unlike Brian Thomas Jr., I think it's a little more inconsistent. And there seems to be times where he's lethargic, maybe uninterested, maybe a little bit heavy-footed, like not putting all his effort into what he's doing. I think he's got some wasted movement in his routes as well. Not a very crisp route runner, little deception through his routes. Like I think he can be a fluid mover. Like I think he has some of the skills to grow in that area. I think about this game versus Kansas this year, where he kind of seemed to be used a little bit more as a traditional wide receiver. Like only 1 of 3 games where he actually caught more than 3 passes. Like he wasn't a high volume guy. And he caught a season high 10 in this one. And he was used a lot more on these intermediate routes as a possession guy. And he didn't impress me after the catch either. Like there wasn't a lot of wiggle there in his game. So there are elements to his profile that are pointing to me towards a raw possession wide receiver in the NFL, which again is really an archetype that's somewhat dying in the NFL. I understand there are some tools there to like. I just don't think that he's that much more special than a lot of wide receivers that are ranked underneath him. So, I mean, if I could trade down and get a Roman Wilson plus, if I could trade down and get a Lad McConkey plus, or hell, give me a different piece. Give me Brendan Rice, man, who I think is actually a very similar type player, might even have a little more juice to him, and might even be a little more athletic. So even if he lands with decent draft capital, I mean, mock draft database we're talking about for the show has this guy 37 overall. That's an early second round pick. That's going to launch him up rankings. And I just don't know if he's a player that I'm going to own a lot of at that price.
Yeah, going back to Keon Coleman and on mock draft database too, he was number 29. I mean, so again, a peak of number 6, which is insanity as far as a draft pick in the first round. But in any case, all very similar receivers there. I think all 3 of them, are, I believe they're all true juniors, right? And they all kind of lacked production early in their career a little bit. I don't disagree with you with Mitchell. I don't disagree with you at all. I think they're kind of in the same bucket. I just
Yeah.
think again, all these bigger receivers, it's just not what is trending in the NFL. All right, my second player that I want to talk about is I just put out a quarterback show here on the channel, so go check that out. But Michael Penix Jr. will not be on any of my rookie squads. He just won't. He's 6'2", 212 pounds, 6-year player. And you can see he's got the PFF, the passing grades here on here. His career statistics are incredible, but I mean, he has 90 TDs in 6 seasons, 30 interceptions. And I know his last 2 seasons at Washington are what everyone's kind of focused on. He's got the medicals. We all know about that. There's one thing I just can't get over, and it's his mechanics. I just can't. I can't. He's got the wonky throw. He's got the wonky release. When he's under pressure, his mechanics fall apart. And yes, he's got that beautiful arm strength. He's got a deep ball that's like gorgeous. He's been dropping bombs to McMillan, Polk, and Roma Dunze all year, and we've seen it. And the ball placement on his deep throws have been phenomenal. I get it. He's probably got the leadership skills you're looking for. He's got the intangibles and the mental processing, but just there's a lack of physicality to his game where the mechanics under pressure. I mean, that Michigan game, and I know people will say you can't let that Michigan game sway you because of what he did for 2 years, but man, come on, he plays in the Pac-12 and plays a lot of cupcake defenses. And, then he goes up against Michigan. And I mean, their focus was to put pressure on him and, make him win with the running game. And man, he just looked not good. And, the first round talk, I think, is insane. For me, from a standpoint of being drafted, I think he is a day 2 project, and he's an older prospect, 6 years. And this time last year, no one was really talking about Penix. And I feel like for quarterbacks, Corey, I don't know if you agree with me or not. I just feel like the NFL just props these guys up all the time.
Yeah.
Because there's such a need for quarterbacks. It's amazing we can't find 32 human beings to play the quarterback at a high level, the position. But that's just how hard it is to, play that position. Michael Penix, I have Rattler above him. I have Bo Nix above him. I mean, I just put out a show and he was my 7th ranked quarterback. I just can't get behind Michael Penix. I don't care where he lands or where he goes. I just think I'm just not a fan of his mechanics and his ability. Plus, over 6 seasons, he rushed for 349 yards over 6 years. So he offers 0 scrambling ability. And in fantasy, which is the lens we're doing these shows through, is he really going to be a fantasy contributor when he's a statue back there? Just not interested in Penix Jr. at all.
No, and then there's, like you were even saying about NFL propping up these guys, there's also some rumors out there that NFL executives, as of right now anyways, are not that excited about next year's quarterback class. So they're starting to even prop up some of these guys, even maybe a little bit higher than they should be. And I mean, like you said, between the medicals with Penix, which I'm really worried about the combine, what's going to come out, 2 ACL tears, shoulder injury, multiple season-ending injuries for this guy. Mm-hmm. And the lacking touch and the Michigan game. And what you don't want to see from your quarterback is when there's a lot of pressure, that he completely loses himself. Like if you were to watch the Texas game the week before, then the Michigan game, the contrast between those 2 games was just wild. But the difference was the pressure, and Penix crumbled under the pressure. You do not want to see. You want to see your quarterback remain poised. You want to see him be able to continue to execute the game plan. And all he was doing was throwing off his back foot, throwing darts down the field, and hoping Roma Dunze was going to bail him out or something. It was a mess from that standpoint. You can't put it all on that game, but still, it scared me for what could happen in the NFL once those big NFL ends start chasing him down.
Without a doubt. And I watched a ton of film on this guy. We've been watching him for years. I mean, he had the cleanest pockets this season. I mean, he just stepped back. He could take his time, go through. He goes to like the Carolina Panthers situation, like poor Bryce Young went to last year. Guy didn't have time to do nothing last year. I mean, I just don't see him being as successful. I mean, unless he goes into the perfect situation. And even then, I will not have shares of Michael Penix Jr. So, hey, Corey, man, thanks so much for jumping on the channel, man. Always a pleasure having you on here talking rookies. Good luck to you in your rookie drafts, my friend.
Appreciate it, Brandon. Thanks for having me.